Hey there, and welcome to Beyond the Lane, our weekly League of Legends professional discussion show, where we talk League of Legends. Imagine that. I am joined here in the studio by the one and the only Mr. Jacob Wolf. Jacob, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing all right.
Looking sharp?
Yes.
Feeling sharp?
I'm feeling sharp.
As you should. Also joining us here to talk about his team, Renegades, is Rob Leonix Lee. Rob, thank you for taking the time.
No problem, man.
How's it going for you?
Very good. Hello, internet friends.
Hi, internet best friend, I think is more
Best
appropriate
friends?
here.
Is that
Internet
what
best
it is?
friends.
Okay.
Yeah, internet bros.
Internet bros.
Gals. Yeah, internet folks. We're happy to have you here. Unfortunately, the first thing I got to ask you about is, the team, which is not doing super well in the LCS thus far. I believe 1-7. What's the mood around the team right now?
Actually, believe it or not, don't believe negative perception, but we're actually doing really well. I think we're kind of in a slump, but if you look contextually, there was, the first week, it was like a decent week, 1-1. And then we kind of hit some issues with Freeze, and we had to sub out. And then we also had to actually find a replacement for our sub. So, contextually, we had to take a blow there and build from scratch. But obviously, if you watch the TSM game, I think we came back looking a little bit stronger, and right now we had to take the hit and slowly build back our team.
So you feel like, considering the circumstances, which have been pretty rough for you, the team's done pretty well?
Yeah, due to scrims and just kind of the team atmosphere, it's actually gotten a little bit lighter around here. I mean, like I said, we did face a slump, and Freeze was out. We had to play with 2 different ADs and a consistent 0-2 weeks, and it's all uphill now.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the individual players getting replaced and coming in and out, but I want to ask you about the team as a whole. You go to Korea, you have some practice time there, you have this team come together and seem to really be set for a good run in the split, and then things unravel for different reasons. You have players having to go in and out for different issues. How do you try to keep track of the team, keep them cohesive, when you have all these disparate things happening that are pulling players out of the lineup every week?
I won't lie, it is fairly difficult just keeping them. For the most part, the veterans of the team could take it extremely well. It's kind of like the newcomers, like RF and Remilia, that had to deal with this is a weekly grind, and also we're facing all these complications. It's truly a test of endurance right now. So as soon as we get through the passing of the test of endurance, that's where you become a veteran. That's where you become a professional gamer, right? That's just kind of something that our rookies will eventually get over.
You mentioned the difficulties faced by RF and Remilia. Obviously, very big news in the scene to have Remy stepping down so soon after she had come into the LCS as the first female player. I want to ask you, starting here, with how the decision was made. As a team, was it just her decision for her to step down from the active roster?
It was we've put an article out there, and we've gotten a quote, and it's all public information at this point. You can just read it. But it was mostly her decision. We try to, we accommodate it as best as we can for Remy. She decided, hey, I'm not a big fan of this grind, so we had to look elsewhere at that point, and we just kind of had to tackle the situation to handle it as professionally as possible at that point. And personally, I fucking love her, and I'd support her on whatever she wants to do. And if that's if she doesn't feel like she's up to the task, or she just doesn't like the grind, then hey, that's we give her a shot, right?
You said that she's maybe not really feeling the grind of LCS, and she is one of the 2 rookies that was in the team. How does that does that have any effect on RF, who is also trying to do this for the first time?
No, not at all. I don't think so. It was just particularly for her, and that's we kind of knew it was coming. Actually, she was letting us know, and she, you know, on a professional standpoint, like she let us know, and we already looked at different people. We actually had practice with Haku before, kind of like this transitional period and phasing in and out of like scrims. So Haku was already a person that we were looking forward to start using in the LCS. So it wasn't like last second or something like that. So it was definitely we were preparing for it.
He's also not the only new member to the team. Against TSM, we got to see Flareus for the first time. Could you expand a little bit more on like what his role has been in the team?
So Flare's is a sub. That's pretty much all I can say on that. Is he permanent? At this moment, no. Everyone thinks that we benched RF based on performance. Actually, RF played well. It's kind of like this strategy. They're a little bit different. Like, for instance, I won't lie. Like, Flare's plays a mean Rise better, maybe even better than RF. So that's why we knew like TSM was going to play Fiora. We wanted to play Rise against Fiora, who was better Rise. So we put Flares in for the time being. There's quite possibility, a chance that RF will come back next weekend, depending on our strategy. It's not that we're benching RF for any reason, replacing RF. I hate reading comments of like people are like, "Holy shit, RF is the problem," or something like that. But to be honest, like it's kind of like the I would hate to use like Keith and Piglet situation. It's kind of like we put them there, so it's like rookies pushing each other. Like if you have a practice partner, they 1v1 all the time. They essentially like push each other to like play better, and that's why we personally are bonded with RF. He's been there from the beginning, and we want him to get better. And one of the ways that we felt that he'll get better is if he needs a practice partner in the top lane, and essentially adding fuel to the fire. And we want him to get better. And that's like our goal, to build him up to be like a really good player. So the only reason why we use Flares at the time, we needed him to play Rise. That's pretty much how it was.
We're talking about player performance here, and we talked about the rookies in particular, RF and Remy. One of the big issues of discussion was Remy's performance, and how she played in the LCS. It seemed like some thought she might have played worse as the weeks went on. Perhaps the nerves got to her more so, or the grind got to her more so. Did you see that? Did you see her performance waning over the course of the weeks, or do you think she just, was in some bad situations with the team?
To be honest, like, again, I'm all about like that context, right? So look at the times where like of her performance, right? Last 3 games before Freeze even came back to even like practice with us was OQ and Lot, which we did not have a lot of time with Lot at all, and we had maybe like 2 days with OQ, right? Those are times where we need to work out bot lane synergy, and like given context, we didn't have enough time to really work on that synergy with our AD and support player. So I think Remy was part of, she was actually a pretty good shot caller for our team. And in the first game with Haku, that it proved, like, look at the C9 game. That's something that we had to figure out for the most part. Like, how do we replace what we just lost and what we've developed over in like Korean boot camp? That is definitely a obstacle. And I'm pretty sure we quickly found out how to deal with that. But like, in terms of like Remy's performance of the grind and stuff, I don't think so. I think it's always been the same. It's just she already had it in her mind that this is the stopping point, and we have accommodated for that from the beginning. We knew that this quite possibly could have came, and that's why we had a Haku at the time. Was she underperforming? I won't ever know unless I'm Remy herself. So, to be honest, I think it was just kind of all the same.
Do you think the subs made it that much more difficult for her, though, trying to integrate into the LCS and to deal with the nerves and obviously her unique situation, being the first female player in the LCS? Was it that much harder because she didn't have a consistent team, a consistent ADC to play with?
I think it was a minor part of it, for sure. I think, she is a type of person that is susceptible to, the community's comments and how she's perceived, and she wanted to try it, and we gave her gave her the way to try it. Like, we knew this was coming. Like, it could quite possibly, like, even way before she had stated like she didn't want to play in the LCS, and then she changed her mind. If she changed her mind, that we accommodated at that point, right?
Just broadly speaking here, how do you go about supporting a player who is in such a unique position? Because, there's only one first woman to play in the LCS, right? And she's already someone who's discussed having perhaps difficulties in playing on the big stage. How do you go about supporting someone in a position no one's ever been in before?
So we kind of tackled that situation. I'm going to tell you and say, we did accommodate. I say that over and over again, but I want to stress this because, in the NACS, we, gave her own room and really made her feel like at home. And we don't do that just for her, obviously. We do that for all the other players. She just needed a little bit more. So for NACS, it was a little bit easier just because it was mostly online. And then the very end game was a LAN, and Riot actually was a big help on accommodating. One of those things is she didn't want to do features in video and put herself out there. Fine, that's fine. Even with my content, internal content, she didn't want to do it. That's fine. We found ways to market her and do other we got the same perception as if she was in content and not. And to work around her, we essentially delivered exactly what she wanted, and we didn't press it. We would never make any of our players do whatever, do something that they wouldn't ever want to do, essentially.
Are there things, I know it's been, not much time to reflect on things, but are there things you think might be done differently, that might have been done differently, that could have had the situation be a little easier for her, or just go differently in some way?
So I actually take a little bit of blame on that for one of the things. One of the main things was, sure, we helped her and do a lot of things in the Challenger series, and that was completely fine. I think we came at her once entering the LCS that, once you enter the LCS, you're put on a pedestal as a professional player. You're seen as a professional, and believe it or not, if you don't want to be seen as a role model, it sucks because you are essentially you're put on that pedestal as a role model, or even a professional gamer. People will look up to you. It doesn't matter if you don't want to be. The thing that I regret is sticking to my guns and saying, Remy, if you want to do this, you need to participate. And when we entered LCS, I think we, as an org and as myself, looked to her, we just accommodated again. And I wish that we eased her into it a little bit harder, but we kind of were a little bit passive as an org. And I don't blame that on Renegades. I actually blame that a little bit on myself for not doing the micro steps into pulling her towards towards the stage and the limelight, so that way she can feel a little bit more comfortable. But that's a little thing. I don't think that's a complete oh yeah, that she's gonna completely do this or change or whatever. That's not on me or anything. I just feel maybe I could have done a little bit more to maybe even change her mind. But I think it was foresight that she was gonna leave anyways.
So you're saying there's things you could have done to ease her transition onto the big stage and being in front of the camera all the time? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think there could have been a little bit done more. At the time, we were okay, maybe this would be the right idea. But now, looking back on it, it's if we took the small micro steps into getting her ready. Let's say, I'll give you a small example, right? One of the content pieces is a road ahead, right? If I maybe sat with her 10 minutes a day, practicing on camera or some shit, or how to present yourself, or working essentially doing an exercise for a PR kind of thing, right? Maybe that could have helped. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not a big deal, but I'm thinking a micro like a micromanagement
Sure.
standpoint. Yeah.
Was it at the end of the day even more challenging than you expected to have the first female player be on your team and have to deal with help her deal with that weight and that expectation?
At the end of the day, no. We treated her like every other player there was. There wasn't the only times where we treated her any bit differently is if she asked us to. The only times that we treat her the same is we make sure like we get the players exactly what they needed and what they want to perform on stage, and fortunately at the time that's what she needed to perform on stage, and that's what we did.
From like a sports psychological standpoint, out of all your team, she's really the only one that has a lot of pushback in terms of a personal matter. So if you look at Crumbs, he's had a little bit of pushback when he was on Dignitas with his play. RF as well, but Alex and Freeze are both highly regarded due to their previous experiences. What has that been like in an environment helping her, not ignore, but deal with the kind of hate that she's had like one-on-one?
I don't think she gets like hate, right? A lot of it's nuked, and I try to be as encouraging of a person as possible. And even as the org, like all the players are very encouraging of her. Not only the org has been encouraging, but like even her teammates. We work as a team. We worked as a team since the Challenger series. Like we were always there. Like I don't think there was any bit like you wouldn't take like a person on the internet's words like literally every single time, right?
Yeah.
The internet actually, no one's ever told a lie on the internet, right? But yeah, like when she's like faced with that situation and like working one-on-one, I think she is an adult and she can deal with it for herself. Like she's a professional. That's how it's supposed to be taken, right?
It was rightly celebrated that she was breaking this ground, but having her exit so quickly, do you think it actually puts more pressure on the next woman to try and make the LCS and be on the big stage like this?
No, not at all. I mean, it's not based on gender at all. That was just based on her, like as an individual person. I expect the exact same thing for if there were to ever be another female player. Like, they're players. Everyone's a little bit different in their own very own way, right? It just so happens to be like everyone goes balls to the wall because it's like, oh, Remy is the first female player. If there was another female player, I'm sure it's a different scenario or a case. Maybe she doesn't have these, anxieties or who knows, right? I don't think it'll be the exact same.
I think a lot of people missed that, particularly when reading Reddit comments when she first said that she was no longer interested in playing. People comparing her to other esports females like Scarlet as well. I feel like a lot of people just missed that.
Yeah, like
they're
people,
individuals.
Yeah, like people need to not blame it on gender. To be honest, like that's not gender. That's on the individual person at that point.
Yeah, at the same time, it's hard to ignore that sort of thing because it is the first time it's happened in the LCS. It's a big deal in some ways. You just can't take that as the full explanation of why things happen, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
You brought on Hakuho, you mentioned before. What was the process like for deciding on him as your replacement support player? So,
obviously, this is during a time where we need to look at free agents that were available at the time. Haku integrated really well with the team, and of the available supports that are available at the time, we brought him in as a sub, and he's just essentially filling the shoes. He is a sub, and depending on how well he does on stage, we'll talk about that in the later future. But he's really good, and he integrates really well with the team at this current point that was available on the free agent pool.
Replacing Freeze temporarily was you mentioned before, with Lot and OQ. That was a pretty different assortment of AD carries. What was it like playing with OQ on the team? What was your perception of him?
So, believe it or not, OQ introduced this honeymoon phase for our team, where, believe it or not, when we played with OQ, we didn't lose a single scrim when we had him for 3 days straight. And he brought this honeymoon phase where he couldn't speak English. He spoke broken English, but very light. Like we're talking about like 2 out of 10 English, and it made everyone stay on their toes. And what I mean by that, when in game, when trying to communicate with OQ, everyone was aware of what he was doing, and also everyone was even more aware of what they were doing, because OQ would be communicating like even the smallest details. Like if RF like took a tower, OQ would be like freaking out, like, "Oh, we took a tower, yeah, good job!" And like he's so motivating, right? Like he's just like this cute Korean boy. We always called him like it was like OQ so cute, like as he's like so cute, and he brought like a new light to the team that we were like playing as like one dimensional as a team. Like we were focused, like this is exactly like how we were playing. But OQ brought this awareness. Like everyone was more aware of what they're doing. And actually like we didn't do too bad with a sub against like Immortals, but it introduced like this idea of like maybe we should try this, like this subconscious and maybe like subliminal thinking in game. And that's like kind of like what we're applying right now with like Haku. But yeah, like playing with OQ, I think it was really beneficial for the team. Now, not just because like we replaced Freeze for that day, but it was enlightening. So that's what we got out of it.
Is like during his time in Korea, OQ was explained to be like this very crazy, upfront Korean. I guess superstar would apply, but more so just out there and does some crazy shit when he plays bot lane.
He was well known. Let's say that.
He was well known for being crazy. Did you see that like like when watching him play in scrims as well as on stage, like him just being a crazy player?
Not exactly. I know what you're talking about in terms of like him being like this crazy AD, like this frontline ADC.
Monte Cristo's favorite ADC, I've heard. Yeah.
So like, I think this is kind of like compared. Okay, so like let me give you an example of this. Like, here I'll give like an example of like a famous ADC, right? Like Doublelift. The reason why he looks like he's ridiculous at times and maybe like stupid at times is because he's not afraid to put himself in a position to do like a maximized amount of damage and like really put himself out there. OQ does like kind of like the same thing. So he was able to provide like an optimal amount of like DPS, and you call him like, oh yeah, like he's crazy or he's far out there, but in all like retrospect, he is just another ADC that optimized in like his efficiency of DPS. That's pretty much it. And Freeze does the same thing. Can I compare their play? Not really, because we play with OQ for about 3 days.
Well, if what OQ brought to the team was so beneficial, perhaps the solution is to just have Renegades not speak English and celebrate towers really heavily, like just go crazy for them, go nuts.
I didn't even think about him in comparison to Freeze, because Freeze used to do the same thing on CW. He would just play a little bit crazy, but the thing is with Freeze is he was always like super good and the super carry of that team. So,
and not as cute, I guess, according to Rob.
Yeah, like.
How would you compare
so
OQ and Freeze actually in terms of like their cute level? Is that a fair comparison?
A cute level?
Yeah.
So like, Freeze is like this handsome Czech boy, right? That I'm like
Right.
really, really attached to because he's my ADC and only my ADC. But like, OQ is like, you don't want to hurt his feelings. Like he was like on stage when we lost to Immortals. Like we lost to Immortals pretty gracefully, right? He was so upset, like he was like, "Oh, it's my fault," and we were like, "No, it's not your fault at all. Like we've only had 3 days to practice with you against like the best team in NALCS. Like this is not your fault." She's like, "No, it's like that's the difference, right? Like the play styles are similar, but like the difference is like Freeze can take a hit because he's, I guess, like older, manlier, and like
and he's
OQ,
been on Copenhagen Wolves.
Yeah, right. And OQ is just like in his mind, he's like, I'm God tier ADC. I'm gonna carry this. And if he doesn't, it's like, oh my God, it's all my fault. And you just don't want him to like be upset. You just don't want to hurt the poor boy's feelings at that point.
The poor boy. It's a tough matchup, or Mortals too, when OQ comes on. That's a hard draw to get.
Yeah, right.
It's like OQ is like so innocent, and then like Freeze just looks like a badass in general.
The Stone Cold Killer. His name's Freeze, right?
Yeah.
I want to also throw in there as well, like look, we threw an OQ for like Immortals game. Like Haku comes in like 1 week, and the first competitive games he's ever played is against C9 and TSM. Like what do people expect at that point? The teams that have been playing for a great C9's been playing for
3 years
ever, right? And the newly TSM has a lot more time and prep than we would have with Haku. So I think we did fairly well against TSM with the small amount of time that we've got together. And then I'm just going to, I even think that the short game with C9 is also excusable at that point. We fucked up lane swaps. Like, we didn't know how to communicate well. We weren't decisive enough. Like, that was obvious at that point.
By the way, what was your impression playing Immortals? What makes this team as good as they are? Because they seem to be head and shoulders above the NALCS right now.
So, I guess so what puts Immortals above everyone else right now?
Besides being 8-0, I mean, that's obvious.
Right,
They're
right.
Yeah.
8-0 Mortals.
There you go.
So, they have this... It's very similar to... Well, okay, let me take an example out from, history, right? Of, League of Legends esports history. I'll use C9 when they were reigning champions, and they were just kind of, dominating everyone with this, particular play style and, exact decisiveness and, their lane swaps and exactly how they knew how to play the game and tailor to exactly what they need. So I'm going to compare that to Immortals. Immortals is very much like that, but C9 was always on the front of trying new things and also being the front runners to continue their success by being ahead of the pack and being ahead of theory crafting. Right now, I think Immortals are at that stage where they know exactly how to play the game. They're exactly decisiveness because of whoever their shot caller is. I'm pretty sure it's Rainover and how they play their game. And the other members are kind of micromanaging, Rainover or whoever their shot caller. I'm assuming it's Rainover. Is very much this high character that micromanages StarCraft, just whole shit ton of APM and just exactly communicating his units on the map. So they're at this point of knowing exactly how to play the game, exactly how they want it, and people need to step up and figure that. Once they do figure it out, I don't think it will be a forever thing. The point of comparing it to C9 on theory crafting and being ahead of the pack, I'm not exactly sure yet because the NALCS hasn't caught up to Immortals yet to see if they have been theory crafting yet in their gameplay style. That's the actual part that I'm interested in if we do reach that part and see if they can actually stay ahead of the pack at that point.
They're also very confident in their play.
In comparison to last year, another team that's kind of in the same boat, I think, is Immortals. Or I guess ask your opinion on it. Rox Tigers, or then Coup Tigers, just influentially knew the game so much better. And then we saw them show up at IEM last year, this time a year ago, and they were broken because of a meta shift. Do you think
they were
Immortals?
GE Tigers at that point?
Oh, they were GE
a third
Tigers,
Tiger's name. Yeah, just can't keep track of them all. There's so many Tigers.
Same team.
Yeah.
Just over and over. Do you think that Immortals could be broken by a meta shift?
Quite possibly. That's where I was talking about that theory crafting and being ahead of the game. Mm-hmm. We haven't broken the front line of defense yet, and making they call Immortals gods, right? Until someone makes the gods bleed, we won't even know until if that meta shift, when it happens, if they're going to be ahead of the pack. So until Immortals loses their first game, I wouldn't even be able to give you an exact answer, depending on how they handle a huge shift in the meta. If they're still undefeated and a meta shift does happen and they're still on top, that can be just due to everyone already figuring it out and they continue to play the same game. So until they actually lose their first one, I can't really give you a straightforward answer.
Speaking of the meta, a new jungler, or not new, but returning jungler is back. Nunu. We saw a little bit of him this weekend. Something that Crumbs probably prefers, if I had to guess. So we're entering a meta of jungle where you have tanks that are utility-based. Do you think that will help your guys' performance given Crumbs' history on this kind of thing?
Quite possibly. I'm not exactly too keen on the idea of saying that, our players are like one-dimensional. I think we play the game fine. It's just like figuring out our team needs to be decisive and figure out how to transition a lot of their like leads into the mid game. If you take a look back in our games, even with the subs, we're ahead like in almost every lane, and we just didn't know how to decisively close out the games and capitalize on those leads. So, with your answer, your question of, if utility junglers come back into play, I don't think that's like a huge boost to us. I think it's still figuring out how to like maintain those leads and capitalize on them.
Well, you've got a big game this weekend with another team that's had some roster issues and is unfortunately on the bottom end of the table, Echo Fox. Any predictions for us on that matchup?
Oh, we'll crush them.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Crush
I think we're just gonna crush them.
You mean Ember?
We're on the up, man.
Ember
oh, you mean
with
Ember?
hard?
Yeah.
Ember Fox?
Oh,
if you want
I don't know. They might. Actually, I take that back. They might like crush us with their salaries.
They
I'm not
might.
exactly sure.
Yeah,
like the
weight.
piles of money, like might actually break my back.
They could.
They break our backs. Right?
Golden Glue can show up with his $96,000 in a bag and just present it in front of Alex Itch, and he'll fall over or
If
something.
you can take it,
Does
it's
that
not
work?
bad.
I mean, we've been going to the gym more. We might have big enough arms to actually carry all that money, but
We'll find out. I look forward to this weekend seeing if you can handle the pure dollar value of your opponent, Echo Fox, Ember Fox slash Ember slash Ember Fox,
Ember
whatever
Fox.
they might go by. We'll see. Rob, thank you for joining us. Any last words or shout outs you want to give?
oh man, like I guess like I really want to tell like the community. I think that the positive comments to my players and to even myself go a long way. And like, if you're a Renegades fan, I'm really appreciative that you guys have been supporting us even through the Challenger Series and even into our downs. And if you are Renegades fans, you know exactly what we're going through, and we appreciate that. And we weren't kidding when we said that this road ahead of us wasn't going to be easy, right?
We look forward to
So-
seeing how it works out this weekend for you against Echo Fox and others. And I want to thank Rob and Jacob Wolf for joining me today on the show. If you like it, you can follow the channel down there. Miss part of it, YouTube, daily.esports. The whole VOD will be up there. Of course, like us on Facebook and Twitter at .esports. And tomorrow, don't forget, the best fighting game show on the planet, Best of 3, is right here on this channel. Be there or be so very square. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great night.